and good evening, wherever you might be, and welcome to Sales TV, the North American edition. We have a wonderful lineup for you today, and I do hope we get a lot of audience participation because it's a topic that I think is going to be quite an interesting one. So
we might not do though, Alex, because there still appears to be the glitch in terms of people entering the event.
Okay. Yes, LinkedIn are having a technical problem. So
we're hoping you're enjoying the rebroadcast.
Right.
Yeah, on an earlier live, we found that guests could watch through our profiles, but they couldn't actually watch through the event itself, and therefore were unable to comment. So feel free to send us DMs through our profiles if you'd like to make a comment on the topic that's being discussed today. We found that worked quite well for us. So without further ado, let's do some introductions. If from what I see on the screen, let's go clockwise, starting with Jensen.
Hi all, Jensen Abbott here, part of Content.ai, and I am really happy and honoured to be part of today's Sales TV.
Yeah, you bring the average age down by more than 50%. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm really excited to be here, part of a group which has a younger average age than normal for me.
Indeed. Mr. Hughes. Oh,
sorry.
You're on.
I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for the fact that I wrote the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Thanks, Tim. Rob?
Hi, I am Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results and professor of marketing at Northeastern University.
Yeah, there we go. The professor. And last but no means least, we have Mr. Steve Moynihan with us today. Do you want to introduce yourself, Steve, and say a few words?
Yeah, you bet, Alex. So hi, everybody. Steve Moynihan. I'm president of Moynihan Sales and Marketing Solutions. We are a fractional consulting / sales company that works primarily with early stage ad tech and martech technology solutions.
Cool.
Welcome, Steve.
Thanks.
Great to have you. And I'm Alex, the BSG. So the BSG, otherwise known as the bearded sales guy. And Steve and I go back a couple of years. So I don't think that's me. Is that someone else? Yeah, Steve and I go back. I'm on a Wi-Fi in this event that I'm at. If you've realised, I don't have my usual background, so if I do lose connection, someone may have to grab the reins quickly. But anyway, Steve and I go back a couple of years. We were working together with a mutual client, and I think it's fair to say we've had a meeting of the minds in terms of how we operate and the world of sales. And both of us have seen how sales as an industry has been changing, but more significantly in the last couple of years. And we're both big believers of the fact that sales today is getting more and more difficult, and it's more about the network that you have and the strength of your network. So, Steve, do you want to maybe talk to us a little bit about why you decided to leave the corporate world and what your backstory is, how you became a fractional, and why you think others perhaps considering this should take the leap?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you a kind of a quick history, quick background to lay the context here. So I've been in advertising and marketing my whole career. I spent the kind of first kind of phase of my career on the advertising agency side of the world. I was a variety of different agencies over 16 years. And then, it took me 16 years to realize what a shitty profession it is. So I finally got smart and left the agency world and actually initially started my own sales company back in 2006 that was focused on advertising sales. And I did that for about 5 years. Really enjoyed it. And then had an opportunity to kind of rejoin the corporate world with a company that actually I was selling for fractionally, and have been selling technology for the last 12 years. So specifically ad tech and martech. Mostly early stage startups. So that's a lot of my experience. And I've done everything from CRO to player coach to just sales guy. And about a little over 2 years ago, I was working for a company, great company. But I really started to see a couple of things going on. One was, first of all, this was kind of in the throes of COVID. And the notion of kind of work from home, work from anywhere was really taking off. So the fact that you didn't really have to be connected to an office anywhere. And I had moved actually from Boston, Rob, to Florida at the time. And then I also saw, the typical kind of sales profile that the company I was working with was hiring was, 3 to 5 years experience, low base salary. And, I was like, okay, this is not me. This is not my background. And I was seeing that kind of trend across a lot of different companies, where it felt like that was kind of, what they were trying to hire, particularly early stage companies. And I really started to feel that, there was an opportunity, and started chatting with, colleagues in the marketplace for kind of reviving kind of my own company, my own sales company. So I made the leap to kind of restart my company and really focusing on fractional sales. And a key part of it for me, and Alex, you touched on it a little bit, was also the kind of the trends or changes in the sales environment. I think very few people would disagree with the comment that like traditional cold outreach is dead. Kind of cold emailing, cold calling, just doesn't work anymore. And the value and importance of having a really well-established network has become more and more important. Also, in my conversations with sales leaders, one of the things that, you'll hear from them is they all want senior level talent. But they're, whether it's their CFOs or whoever, basically won't let them pay full freight for senior level talent. So for me, the kind of the notion was, what if you just paid for part of me? And that seemed to be a very appealing kind of option for companies. So kind of fast forward to 2.5 years later now, I've got a handful of clients that kind of comprise kind of the core of my business. And those clients, are mostly early stage startups. In some cases, I am the one and only salesperson in that org. So I'm kind of fractional CRO, helping with everything from sales strategy to go-to-market planning to ICP planning. In some cases, I am more of kind of just a hired sales gun. But the commonality across all of them is the fact that when I lay out kind of my approach to selling, it all starts with not only my existing network, but I think the other thing is the skills to build a network. And again, I think that's also something that's not necessarily taught younger salespeople. They're just kind of thrown in the pool, and I think if you're going to build really quality relationships, that also takes time. It's because trust is a big part of that. So you've got to be able to deliver for somebody. So I think it was the ability of not only my existing network, but the skill set to actually kind of continue to build on that network that a lot of folks found attractive. And the other thing I'm really proud of is that all of my clients have either come from prior relationships or through referrals. So I haven't had to go out and pitch myself to anybody. Basically, it's been people who I've worked with in the past who know and trust me, or people who I've been referred to. And that's, that's a great way to start a relationship too. So so that's kind of a quick history, Alex, kind of the why behind it. So
that's
that's
Go on,
really, really great that you have built a career out of your network, basically. And I would imagine that most people would recognize the power of that. I've known you for 20 years. We've worked together at 3 times in the past, and actually, therefore, I'd recommend you to anyone in my network because I think you're great, and I've seen you deliver magic previously.
Yep.
That makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense to you, to me, to everybody on the call. So why do so few people do that? Why do you see so few people that have got large, diverse networks that they're constantly in dialogue with?
Yep.
And it's kind of it's a bit of a sort of rhetorical leading question.
Yep.
But how did you arrive at that decision, like we did, but so many people don't when it seems so obvious?
Well, I think that there's a large percent of people out there who are pretty risk averse. And look, it takes a leap of faith a little bit to go and start your own business with no steady paycheck, no built-in benefits or health insurance or those types of things. So because I do talk to a fair amount of people who will be like, oh, I wish I could do what you're doing, but and the but is I have young kids, or like I'm just not wired to kind of take on all of that risk myself. I benefit from the fact that I've done this before, and I did it when I did it the first time. I had a lot more risk. My kids were young. I was saving for college. I had a big mortgage. I had, now my kids are, grown and, kind of productive people, and, I have kind of less obligations. So doing it the second time was actually a lot less risky for me. But I think that, it's the risk factor for a lot of people.
But even if you went back into the corporate world now as a full-time employee for X Corp, you'd still sell in the same way, wouldn't you? You'd still grow your net. And so it's less about the fact that you're a pirate.
Yep.
We're all pirates. We're kind of sailing our own ships and out there conquering worlds and whatever. And it's more about the fact
Captain.
This is the obvious way to sell in 2023 is to build a relationship with someone. We've met now. We'll be friends from now on.
Yep.
And maybe you'll buy from me, maybe next month, maybe next year, maybe in a decade.
Yep.
But at some point down the road, I'll be the obvious choice for you.
Now, that's a great point, Adam. And again, I think so, to add to kind of my comments, I think part of it is, a lot of these startups are, venture backed or PE backed, and there's tremendous pressure to close today. And building relationships takes time. You can't do that overnight. Relationships aren't by their nature aren't transactional. So the pressure that's put on kind of the sales org today to, kind of grow the business, beat last quarter, it's more about, kind of churning and more about just, quick hits and trying to get to, that person as quickly as possible. And so I think that's a big part of why it's really not adopted today, because, there's a lot of pressure to just continually perform. And that makes it hard to take the time to kind of strategically build relationships and build a story.
So Steve, I wanted to pick up on something you were saying initially, because what you witnessed in sales, I witnessed also in sales enablement.
Yep.
They wanted to hire the several years experience, the tenured professional. They wanted to pay at the entry level or just above entry level. And what that really means is, in sales enablement, they are paying to train on their dime.
Right.
How much of what you do as a fractional is training your replacement? how much of it is the front line, I'm doing the selling, and how much of it is, here's how you can actually hire somebody at the rate you're willing to pay and have them be successful if I work with them.
Yep. Yeah. So honestly, Rob, very little of that right now, just because the stage that most of the companies that I'm working with are at. But I see, as I continue to work with them, kind of that's the trajectory, the path that this is going to go is, you know, and in some cases I'll be honestly hiring my replacement, you know, I mean, a full-time, you know, CRO or VP of sales that, you know, that can just, you know, kind of fully take over what, you know, what they're doing. And what I'm hoping to be able to do is, you know, because again, a lot of my work in those instances is around sales strategy, you know, building playbooks, those types of things, that I can leave them a really nice, parting gift, you know, and all of that, as well as, some built-in relationships and deals and things like that too. But yeah, I think, that's, and that's part of the challenge too. I think just in traditional sales culture or sales enablement culture is, there's no kind of formal training anymore, and Jensen can probably speak to this better. But it's again, you're thrown in the deep end, and it's like, okay, go, maybe you get to sit on a couple of other sellers' calls before, like you're expected to, go start, kind of selling. But I've seen kind of, and it was an issue for me when I was in advertising too, was, I used to be very involved in sales training or in our training programs on the agency side, and they just kind of went by the wayside because they didn't want to invest in them, and they took time, and I think the same thing is happening in sales now too. Is very few cases where you've got a really solid, strong sales training program that's going to enable a seller, a younger seller, to really hit the ground running and successfully.
Yeah, you raise a really good point there, Steve. And I don't know if you want to talk to that, Jensen, but certainly as I was listening to you earlier, Steve, talk about the importance of a strong network and the fact that you're in quite a fortuitous position where you've built that network over a number of years. And that's fantastic. Jensen, who is, approaching his mid-20s, still relatively new to sales with almost 3 years experience, doesn't have that advantage. And so, what is it that you're doing, Jensen, to overcome that disadvantage when it comes to growing your network?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a number of points that I could go off, but I think it's, first of all, I'm going to use the word genuine, because I'm a big believer in being genuine, whether that's inside of sales or outside of sales. Most people can sniff someone out if they're not being genuine. There's many ways of doing that, through posts, the way that you talk over messaging, to the way that you talk over the phone. We all have a certain way of speaking or writing, and people are able to sniff out if we're not being genuine. I would also say be curious. We have two of these and one of these, and a lot of salespeople don't like to use it that way. They like to reverse it. They think that they're a lot more important. They think what they have to say is kind of the golden ticket to a lot of people's pain problems, when actually, if you were to listen to the pain points that they had or the problems they had, you'd be able to move the conversation a lot further if you actually listened and understood what the person was saying or what the prospect was saying. And then finally, I just love networking. I love speaking to people. I love actually getting myself out there. Every day as people, we have to sell ourselves, whether that's within our role, or whether that's even if we're going down to the shop. We like to I imagine that we have kind of a share price above our head, and I want to keep that share price as high as possible. So I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be genuine. I'm going to smile. I'm going to be able to have a conversation with someone and actually be curious about them, not just about me hitting my quota. Which also I think leads on to a lot of the messaging people use when trying to outreach to prospects or people, is they're very kind of quota, or I need to hit my goal this month. So their messaging is a lot more kind of, I'm just going to hope this works. And it's not actually taking time to understand if you put yourself in that person's shoes, would you read the email you just sent to that individual? Because I guarantee 60% of people would say, no, I wouldn't read it. Why would I read
More
it?
than 60%.
Yeah.
More like 90.
And this is, I think, what people have to understand is we are all very busy as individuals. We all have a day job. We all have to still find time to network. So it's really, I would say it's just putting the time into being curious and finding out more information about that individual, which links back again to the word genuine. You would like to build that genuine relationship with someone, to see if there is any synergy. If there's no synergy and that person doesn't want to talk to you, I like to look at no as next opportunity. If that person says no, there's always a next opportunity within that account, within that organization, that you can then kind of portray yourself to that person and adapt the messaging. Actually, let's not throw spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks. Let's not be product led. Let's actually be curious to find out more about the individual, find out about the pain problems they've experienced over their career, not just in the role they're in now. That's one thing that's helped me is be more curious with people's kind of career journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said earlier about networking, I remember your very first networking opportunity and how worried you were. You were like, Dad, what do I say? I'm like, just be yourself, Jensen.
Yeah.
And we were with this guy as well.
Exactly that. And if I remember, that was actually, it was an LA Anti-Con event that we went to.
LXA. Yeah, Anti-Con.
That's the one. And being honest, I had to down 2 glasses of wine to get the confidence to go over and speak.
Okay. It wasn't 9 o'clock in the morning, just to be clear.
it was approaching end of the day, but the first real opportunity, I was a deer in headlights. I was worried. I was trying to look for someone in the room who I could almost look up to, aspire to be. And I finally hit the realization. I thought, why don't I lead by example? Why don't I actually kind of grab the bull by the horns? Why don't I research the industry that I'm in right now? Let me find statistics to back my points up so I'm seen as credible. Again, add that genuine aspect and be curious about the individual. Ask questions about them. Let them open up and talk. And then I'll sit back and wait for the questions to be asked. And you soon find you're in a conversation, a 15-minute conversation with this individual. So it's that kind of, I find it's a lot of mental prep. It's understanding everyone's in the same boat as you, understanding that not everyone's going to be confident, but if you would like to get to your North Star, you've got to be seen as genuine and you've got to be seen as approachable.
Steve, I want to come back to something Jensen mentioned in passing, but I'm really curious. As a fractional seller, how does quota work? I mean, you're serving more than one master. How does that get resolved?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. In most cases, I am kind of additive to whatever the organization is already doing. So I typically don't have the arbitrary quarterly goal that most, kind of sellers have who actually work for the company. And it's one of the most liberating kind of things in the world because, as we all know, I mean, they're completely arbitrary. I mean, does it really matter if I close a deal on September 30th or October 1st? From a commercial standpoint, from a financial standpoint, makes no difference at all. But right now, I've got, friends on some of the companies that I work with who are sweating bullets because they're 10 days from the end of the quarter and they're desperately trying to get deals in. And I'm patiently working deals and letting the deal cycle kind of run its natural course. And we'll get a deal closed on October 3rd or October 4th. So it actually, for me, it's been one of the most, kind of, because, and Alex, I know you're a big proponent and talking a lot about the mental health of sales professionals. And I think the quarterly goal is probably one of the biggest contributors to, poor mental health for salespeople is and look, we all have to be accountable. I'm, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we don't need to be accountable, but we should be accountable to things that are real and not arbitrary. So, so it definitely kind of helps me in terms of kind of managing, kind of deal flow and everything else, where again, yes, we want to get deals closed as quickly as we can, but when you start to interrupt the natural kind of progress of a deal, that's when you start to look, not genuine, to use Jensen's kind of terminology, or desperate, or you come across as just another sales guy, as opposed to somebody who really cares about, helping your client, solve a particular pain, or, a particular challenge. So, anyway, but yeah, that's a really good question, Rob. Like I said, it's funny that I just talked to somebody about that yesterday.
So does that mean as a fractional, you are commission only?
Nope. So with my core clients, it's a combination of retainer and commission. And the retainer, the way I position the retainer with those clients is, those are the clients where I'm doing more than just being a hired sales gun, where I'm actually spending time helping them with their go-to-market strategy, with their ICP planning, reviewing their sales materials. Because that's real time. And that's time that I'm not, selling to somebody, and I, so I need to get compensated for that time. And that's been genuinely, kind of accepted. I've had, clients who push for commission only, and I'm like, that's really not, not my model. And to be fair, I do have a handful of, I'll call them kind of referral agent or advisory agreements that are commission only. But I don't spend a terrible amount of time on those accounts. It's more, if I'm in a conversation with somebody, or if I'm at a conference and I hear a conversation and I'm like, oh, that could be a really good fit for, for this client, I'll flip the referral over to them. But I really try and spend the majority of my time, focused on, kind of my core clients that are, a combination of retainer and commission. So.
It's interesting you say that. I was speaking with a number of startup founders last week. I was at a week-long conference, and one of them was talking about, I'm thinking about hiring a salesperson. They didn't use the term fractional, but effectively, and commission only. And I tried to convey to them exactly what you just said. While you will bring opportunities to them where there's a fit, it's more about when you stumble upon them versus you actively seeking out opportunities on their behalf. And while financially it sounds great for these startups to only pay when commission is due, if nobody's actively working on their behalf, how can they expect anything to come in? Do you have a lot of those kinds of conversations?
Yes. Yeah. And it kind of goes exactly that same way. It's kind of, they get you what you pay for, right? I mean, although having said that, I do believe that, and I'm kind of surprised that more startups don't have a more active kind of referral network, where, they have, people out there, even if it is commission only, because that doesn't cost you anything. They have more people out there who are eyes and ears for you. And then, and if you compensate them in an appropriate way, one of the models I've adopted with, one of my clients right now is pre-revenue. And so the model with them is retainer, but then I'll call it a meeting bounty. So basically it's and we do it based on a kind of a second meeting. So a second meeting with a qualified prospect, then I get, basically a kind of a dollar distribution, $700 a call, because again, they're pre-revenue. So there's really no opportunity for commission. But we wanted to have kind of another incentive in place to make sure we're getting them to the right people and the quality people. So, there are different ways you can structure it as a company, to kind of activate, kind of an army of referral agents. But at the end of the day, if you really want to kind of have more of a focused approach, I think the retainer approach is really important because, again, we're spending more than our time just selling, with those clients, and need to make sure that, we're getting compensated the right way.
When it comes to leveraging the network to even start the fractional selling process, is it generally I'm going to do this thing and I'll let everybody know, or is it I will let everybody know and then I will do this thing? What do you believe is more impactful, more effective, or quote unquote the right way about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, the right way for me is I don't want to, uh, because your network is a really valuable commodity. So what I want to avoid is reaching out to them with things that aren't a good fit. It's like, so I'll do a lot of research up front to really understand, again, what solution am I solving for? And that's the other thing too. And this comes from my days in advertising. I'm very much, kind of the solution selling mindset. It's like, do you have a pain or a challenge that I can help you solve? I'm not selling you a product. I'm helping you solve something. And so I want to make sure that whoever I'm having the conversation with, I believe, maybe feeling that pain, or knows somebody who's feeling that pain, and they can help me get to that person and talk to that person. I always like to start off engagements with newer clients with what I call kind of a listening tour. So particularly if they're kind of a newer startup. So instead of going straight to setting up sales calls, I want to set up kind of a listening tour and that's a much easier entry point too with your network, where it's like, hey, I just took on this new client. I think they're super interesting. Want to get your perspective, and you set up a 30-minute call with somebody, and it's, it's a very soft sell. It's, I'll have the founder on the call who, can articulate what they're solving for, but it's more about, and Jensen, you talked about this, it's more about listening. It's more about what are your, pain points? What are your challenges right now? And then, at the end of that call, it's like, oh, okay, there feels like there's something here. Let's set up another call to dig in more. And you can invite some folks from your team. And, I find that to be really, really successful. And in a really great way to activate your network, as opposed to, constantly going at them with like, hey, I got another thing to sell. So because again, these are built on trust and relationships, and so I want to make sure that I'm reinforcing that, and not degrading that by, just bringing random opportunities that really, just to make myself, make me look good to the founder. Like, oh, I got a meeting with an EVP of blah, blah, blah. But if it's not really a good fit, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
How do you manage your time effectively, Steve?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alex. And I've experimented with kind of different models. And generally the model that I've kind of landed on is, so I tried I'm going to spend a day on each client. I have 4 core clients. So day on each client, and then kind of a flex day. Friday is like, that didn't really work for me. And I think it's because, admittedly, I have a bit of ADHD, and I just get bored really easily. And so working on even something for a whole day, it was like, oh, okay, I need a break. So what I've done is I chunk up the day into blocks. So, generally 2-hour blocks. So I'll work 2 hours on one client, 2 hours on another client. Obviously, if we have, calls set up and things like that, I work around that. But I've found kind of that block approach works really well for me, because I kind of work in sprints. It's like, okay, I'll bang out a bunch of stuff that I need to do for this one client, feel good, move on to the next client, get a lot done there, feel good, move on to the next client. That generally works pretty well for me. But I want to go back to something Jensen was also talking too, because it's also, again, I think it's gotten harder, kind of post COVID, to build a network, and I think it's gotten harder because we're getting fewer and fewer opportunities to actually engage with people in person. It's really hard in a 30-minute Zoom call to build a relationship with somebody. I grew up in the days of, in-person sales meetings where, you'd have a few minutes on the front end and the back end to like shoot the shit. You'd be in someone's office and you'd see a picture of their family and you'd go, oh, like, oh, that's your family. Like, oh, you went skiing. Like, are you a skier? Like, tell me about that. I love to ski too. And you have this opportunity to kind of build, like, again, back to what Jensen was saying, you're a genuine person, you're a real person, you're not just salesperson 47365, and you start to build that relationship, and then you can send them a note like, hey, I saw this really cool article about snow skiing in Aspen, thought you might find it interesting. And you don't have that anymore. Every once in a while you'll get lucky and someone on a Zoom call will have like a really interesting background and you can kind of like pick up on that and have a conversation about that. But it's gotten harder. And again, and I think, for younger sellers, again, I grew up in an era where it was a lot easier to build a more personal relationship with people than it is today. That's why for me, conferences have really come back into play too. I mean, the value of actually getting, Rob, you mentioned you were at a conference last week. I mean, getting kind of presence at a conference. I'm going to a direct to consumer conference in Austin, Texas in 2 weeks. And, and a chance to actually like break bread with people. And I mean, actually a great story I went to a conference last year and it was a loyalty conference. And there were 2 clients there that I had sent notes to ahead of the conference because they were speakers. Like, hey, would really love to kind of meet with you when you're there, blah, blah, blah. No response, no nothing. We're sitting at lunch and just going around the table and start having conversations about like what you do. And I was talking about my client and I'm like, and here's what they do. And both of them were like, wow, that's super interesting. Like, I'd really love to learn more about that. And I put one of them on the spot kind of in a nice way. And I said, look, I'm trying not to be a jerk here. I said, but I had emailed you ahead of the conference with pretty much exactly what I just shared with you over lunch. And I got no response. I said, this just to me tells me the importance of face-to-face. Like, I got 5 minutes to share my story with you, to listen to you and understand kind of what's a challenge for you. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I want to have a meeting, and you're not going to get that in a cold email. So, so I think that's also becoming more important for sellers again, is kind of the conference environment and getting in front of people live.
Well, I like how you incorporated both. You live in today's world. You reached out digitally in advance. You met in person. You follow up digitally. And that's the thing I was speaking with the people about last week, because going to this conference, I had tried to do similarly, connect with them ahead of time. And then the whole socialization becomes that much easier, whether it is in person or online. That simple reach out in advance made all the difference.
Yeah. Even if it just creates a little bit of name recognition or awareness going in, they go, oh yeah, you sent me an email. Like, so I'm sorry I didn't respond. And it's like, no, there really was I had no expectation that you were going to respond, but I'm glad you remember me. Right. And then it's a great entry point for conversation as well. So, yeah.
But I think though that I get what you're saying. The point is that, as you said, you go into someone's office, you see a picture of them and the family skiing, and you go, "Oh, you like skiing, yeah." But I think that one of the beauties of social is that you have an almost infinite audience, and the nice thing about that is that you post pictures of you skiing, and you post pictures of you skiing, and then they say, "Hey, Steve, I see you're skiing," and maybe not that exact person, but other people that look just like them. And that's why this lending to Jensen's comment about being authentic. You show his pictures of you with your kids, his pictures of you skiing, his pictures of you getting on a plane, his picture of you doing all these things that other people do. And then they go, that's really funny. I must have been at the airport the exact same time that you were. Great. Okay, well, that's the start of the conversation. And whilst, yeah, you get to drive it if you see them getting on the plane, but equally, they can walk towards you if they see you getting on the plane.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, Adam. I mean, and again, Alex and I have had a lot of conversations about this. I mean, I got him to thank to kind of opening up my mindset a little bit in terms of how I use things like LinkedIn. Like I used to be, it was like, oh, I have to have a really serious business conversation, or it's like, I'm sending like a white paper for one of my clients. But I've started to, again, use it, more from a personal standpoint, I mean, in terms of, things that people can relate to. And I mean, if I look at like average engagement rates, I mean, the ones that I post that have more of a personal kind of bent to it, like just blow white paper reposts away. I mean, because again, you become a real person and you're like, oh man, wow, hope you survived the hurricane okay, or I mean, whatever it might be. And what's been great about that too is I'll get people who aren't even in my network who will see it because of the network effect, comment on it, and then all of a sudden it gives me an opportunity to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I saw your name pop up in my feed, like would love to connect, and away you go. So yeah, I agree. I mean, it's you still have those grumpy people who will be like, this isn't Facebook, this is LinkedIn. They're like, and it's like, all right, lighten up a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to put like what I had for dinner or what I had, but it's like if there are meaningful things going on in my life, it was International Dog Day a couple weeks ago. I've got 2 awesome golden retrievers that are my office mates, and I put a picture up saying, love going to work every day with these 2 guys, and the engagement rates were off the charts, and people can relate to it, and again, you come across as genuine and a real person. So,
Steve, my observation is that those same people that police LinkedIn saying this isn't Facebook are the same ones that are asking you, who gave you permission to be a fractional seller?
Right. Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I just wanted to add a point to Steve, your point. I actually I kind of trialed something on LinkedIn. I actually took an article that was written, it was on a headless CMS approach, but the article had very little engagement. And I thought, right, I want to try something here. It was a company that posted it. I thought, I'm going to rewrite that article, give it a bit of energy, chuck in some jokes. And I actually put the picture of the article had nothing to do with headless CMS or work. It was a picture of me. Now, that article received 19 likes. That's one of the most I've had on an article, not a post, but an article. Mm-hmm. So it's the power of actually, even if you can take something that's from business and add your personal touch to it, people are more inclined to read it, understand it, reach out. And also to add to that point as well, I've had a lot of success the last week in being genuine and authentic on people's posts, commenting, asking questions, finding out where people have gone on holiday. What was your highlight experience from this trip? I would love to share more. And from me doing that on Friday, so I kind of blocked out Friday to do that. I booked 13 calls with people, or conversations, shall I say, with people. And no, it's not about work. It's actually about me wanting to learn more about them. If an opportunity arises, happy days. If it doesn't, well, I've grown my network and I've built a relationship with someone.
Yep, exactly.
Brilliant. So we're coming to the end. Yeah, we're coming to the end. This has been fantastic, Steve. Thanks. And Jensen, thanks so much for sharing your time with us and sharing your experiences. I know we've had a technical fault with LinkedIn, so we've not been able to see comments, but I'm sure that the content here that we've been talking about has been interesting for the audience. So to finish up, because what we like to do is kind of set the audience a challenge, and and then I'll post a poll in the group, on the SalesTV group on LinkedIn. If there was a challenge that you could set, perhaps it's for those that are considering fractional or considering that type of role, leaving the corporate world. What would it be?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, it's something that I've started doing in the last 6 months, and it relates back to the network, and that is reconnect with your network. Like, I have started basically just like someone who I haven't talked to in years, and I'll just shoot them a note and say, you know what, like we haven't talked in years. Can we just like grab 30 minutes and just like catch up? And it's been great on so many levels. I mean, I've uncovered opportunities through it, but more importantly, just reconnecting with old friends and what they're doing, and so I guess my challenge to the folks kind of watching would be take time every week to reconnect with your network, like 2 conversations a week with people that you haven't talked to in a long time, just to check in and see how people are doing. And I think you'll find it really rewarding on a lot of different levels.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Brilliant. Great advice. Cool. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. Thanks again, Steve.
You bet.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Jensen.
Thanks all. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.